Well, hey there, you're on the internet, I have some free time, and welcome to the Triple N Network, where all you newbie nib nerds can find all the news you'll need. Let's look at an ink today. Now brace your ears because I'm going to murder this. Today's ink is by Rohrer Klingner, or Rohrer Klingner. It's their Iron Gall blue, Salix, or Salix. Now, an Iron Gall ink, essentially what it sounds like, it has some iron in it. So it's known for being permanent or semi-permanent, and it tends to get darker as it dries and sort of turns more gray. Now all the tests were done in this Knox Galileo with a fine nib. Granted, you know, the nibs, Knox nibs aren't marked, but I just wanted to see it is quite a fine nib. And this Pilot Vanishing Point with the broad nib. Now let's check out the chromatography. Now here's how you're supposed to do chromatography, and I hope the camera will pick this up. You can see it really was like kind of like fighting, like it didn't want to go up, but also there's this, it's almost like cream colored, I doubt the camera will get it, but there's this weird sort of like cream colored band up at the top, which is blue, blue, more blue down here. And here I let it dry. As you can see, much more of that blue remained, and just a little bit of it went up. And maybe the cream color will be more noticeable here. But anyways, thought that was interesting. I compare it to some similar inks that have kind of a similar woolly texture. This was the vial of ink I had that was called Gerbon's Eclat de Saphir. But so many people have come at me essentially saying that this is wrong, this isn't right, blah, blah, blah. I'm redacting that, so let's just say that's not there. So this is Salix, and here's Gerbon's Lavender Scented Blue, Diamine's Indigo, Noodler's Bad Belted Kingfisher, and Pilot Namiki Blue. And they kind of all have this sort of woolly texture to them. And here I thought I'd compare it to some other permanent inks. So here's Noodler's Blue Upon the Plains of Abraham, Private Reserve Fast Drive Midnight Blues, which is not touted as a permanent ink, but has a good deal of water resistance. Noodler's Q-Ternity Blue Black. Here's Salix. And Document Dark Blue. On to the paper tests. Clairefontaine 90 grams per square meter. As you can see, very good potential for shading. It's a nice straightforward blue. It's sort of a gray blue. It definitely reminds me of, you know, SOS scrubby pads, you know, the iron wool. But yeah, 15 seconds to dry in the fine, 17 in the broad. Yeah, it's a nice blue. I said it's very professional, appropriate. There's no bleed, no feather, no spread. Good flow. You don't have to fight it out of the pen, you know. No bleed at all. Really no show through. But this is very dense paper. And as you can see, the water test didn't move. I mean, nothing left. Granted, the bleach test did turn it orange. But I also hope this comes up on camera. If you look at this, this is much more blue, and this is much more gray. Can you see that? Anyways, Rhodia, 80 grams per square meter. Again, fantastic shading. Fine took 11 seconds to dry. The broad vanishing point took 15. Again, you have great shading. It's this nice woolly sort of blue, kind of hazy. Where you lay it on thick, it can be very dark. Still good flow, no bleed, feather, or spread, no sheen seen, very professional, appropriate, as I said. And again, the water test did not blink, it did not move, but it did turn sort of a darker gray. And the bleach test turned it orange and wiped it out. Next is Tomoe River Paper, where it got dark, it got very pleasantly dark, and where it was light, it did look a bit thin, and yet, I don't know, something tells me that in like a stub, this would have all kinds of beautiful effects. So anyways, look at all that very distinct shading. So if you're like me and you like it, that's fantastic. If you don't like that, maybe not the ink for you. Now, the fine took 12 seconds and the broad took 17, and I was actually pleasantly surprised by how little variation there was in drying times, because Tomoe River is known for really drawing out those dry times. But very nice. No bleed, no feather, no spread. There is some echo, but really, considering, not so much for such a thin paper. So, yeah. And again, water test did not move, did not blink. It just sort of got more of a dark gray. The bleach test absolutely obliterated it. Turned the edges orange, but I mean, this isn't some fancy Noodler's ink that's like meant to repel lasers, but water, it does great. So anyways, here's the world's worst 20-pound copier paper. This is the stuff that gets absolutely decimated when it shouldn't. And yet, here, in the fine we see 10 seconds, and in the broad we see 17, and we still get shading. And granted, there's some spread and there's some intense woolliness that almost bleeds over into feathering. But look at that. They say here, no bleed. Even in the broad. Even in the water test. When was the last time we saw this? Crazy, right? Anyways, again, water test, just sort of got darker and grayer. Bleach test obliterated it, but look at that. This is very professional looking blue. This would be great in office situations and for filling out forms because it's dark enough and it's at least water resistant. I mean, semi-permanent. I'd call it permanent. Now, here's Mead Notebook Paper, and originally I was just going to write the name in the broad nib, but since it did so well, I decided to use them both throughout. As you can see, there's still great shading. The fine took 8 seconds, the broad took 13. Again, no bleed. When was the last time we saw that? Because this is really thin, cheap paper. There is a bit of spread, but not really any feathering. I mean, it's so well behaved. And here it actually didn't turn that gray. It turned a bit gray, but not as gray as before. And again, bleached. Now, this is that Moleskine paper that was behaving freakishly well. As you can see, this side of the paper, you can sort of see the texture of it. It's more matte, whereas on this side, it's just straight up shiny. And I think that's why it was behaving so well previously. But even here, I mean, considering how well it did on this very, very cheap paper, I'm fairly confident that even standard Moleskine paper would do very well. As you can see, there's great shading. Dry times are oddly consistent no matter the paper. Now here, this is the weird thing that happened. It actually turned a lighter blue. And it didn't quite wash away, but it sort of like thinned out. So that was odd. And then the bleach test, again, turned it orange and got rid of it. But okay. So I've heard people say that Salix was great in vanishing points that were a bit reticent. And I don't know if my camera will show this, but the gap between the tines of my vanishing point is actually pretty broad. Like there. You see that? So sometimes it's hard to get ink to flow through this very easily, so I thought I'd give it a try. And it definitely worked out. I'm considering buying some. It definitely wasn't very hard to, or it wasn't difficult to clean out. It did leave a little bit of some kind of film, but that was also not that hard to wash out, and it didn't like turn things bright pink the way some dark blue inks can, oddly. But yeah, I was seriously impressed. The way it performed on these really cheap papers definitely wowed me. So for your consideration from the Triple N Network, if you liked the video, please give it a thumbs up. If you'd like to see more, please subscribe to the channel. And thanks for watching. Bye.